Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Anita Caswell, Executive Wealth Manager at BMP Wealth. And joining me today, you can't see him now, is Mr. Jason Hare, Head of Technical Sales for Northeast Asia and Hong Kong for Quilters International. For BMP, if you don't know who we are an independent financial advisory firm here in Hong Kong. And our focus, we specialize in helping the clients to have enough money for the rest of their life in the lifestyle of their choice. And that number of enough is different to every person. But anyhow, today we're going to focus on people who are moving to the UK or people who are planning to move to the UK some point in the future. So in the next hour or so, between me and Jason, we're going to make sure we make it enjoyable and informative. And the first 30 minutes, Jason will go through some technical issues, in particular UK taxes. Wow. Anyway, the second half is going to be my turn. So please stay until the end. I'm going to go through some practical examples so you can see how some of the strategies might be able to help our clients and yourself. And I have to say that, every situation is different, every case is different, but hopefully this example will give you some very good ideas. We'll welcome questions from you guys, so please ask questions as we go along, or you can wait until the end. And if you have a lot of questions, don't worry about that. The presentation, the copy presentation will send to you after this seminar. Anyway, not going to keep you guys waiting. Jason, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Thanks, Anita. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to just give you a brief introduction to UK tax, how it works, and legitimate strategies to manage and mitigate and minimize it. So before we start, anything that you see on the slide that's in green and bold and underlined is a legal or a technical term, and it might have a meaning which is different to its normal meaning in English. I'll give you an example shortly. So just if you see something in green like that, just bear in mind it has got a special meaning. For exchange rates, I'm simply going to use 10 Hong Kong dollars to 1 sterling, just to make it easy. And some acronyms. The first is HMRC, that's the UK's version of the IRD. They're the people that are tasked with raising money for Her Majesty's government. Capital gains tax that we don't have here in Hong Kong, but we very much do in the UK. IHT is inheritance tax, same thing. That's a big issue for people with assets in the UK. All right, so let's start then with what is UK residence. Now, just for comparison purposes, Hong Kong residence is very simple. It's a day count. So if you spend 180 days of the financial year here or 300 days in 2 consecutive years, then you're classed as Hong Kong tax resident. So very easy, simply counting days. UK tax resident is more complicated. Now, the first thing to say is that the tax year begins on the 6th of April, runs through to the following 5th of April. That's for historical reasons that I won't go into today. And again, residence depends. There is a day count, the number of days that you spend in the UK each year. Now, you'll see there the word days is in green, bold, and underlined, which means it has a special meaning. And days in the context of UK resident means being physically present in the UK at midnight. So if you take a flight to the UK and it lands at 5 to midnight, that is a day of residence in the UK. But if your flight lands 10 minutes later at 5 past midnight, that's not, that day is not a day count. If anyone that spends 15 or fewer days of the tax year in the UK will be categorically not tax residents. Okay, so anyone can spend 15 days there and they won't fall into the tax residence trap. Anyone that spends 183 or more days there is categorically resident. So that's resident for the whole of the year. So you might only be there for just over 6 months, but you're classed as resident for the whole of the year. But what happens if you spend more than 15, but fewer than 183 days there, as a lot of people do? If that's you, you will need to take something called the statutory residence test. This was introduced in the UK in 2013, because prior to that, there were a lot of court cases where the taxman and the taxpayer were arguing over whether the taxpayer was in fact resident for any particular year. So this has cleared it up. So it is still a day count, but there is some complexity to it. This is a flow chart. All the accountancy firms produce them. My firm produces one as well. And it only takes about 5 minutes to go through it. But what it will do at the end of that 5 minutes is tell you for your particular situation, for the particular tax year in question, how many days you can spend in the UK without falling into the residence trap. Okay, so this is at the bottom of the table here. And if you're going to the UK, we look at the right-hand side, not the left-hand side. That's if you're leaving the UK. So if you are going to the UK, actually, you can spend up to 45 days in the UK and definitely not be tax resident. Okay. If you're there for 183 or more, you're always going to be tax resident for the whole year. But if you're in between, there are 3 other day count thresholds: 90 days, 120 days, and 182 days. So, and depending upon your particular circumstances and situation, your particular day count will be any one of those 5 numbers, and it could change from year to year. So you could be present in the UK for only 46 days of the year, but actually tax resident for the whole of the year, which can come as a bit of a shock to people. So you could end up moving to the UK in February and actually have your tax residence backdated to the previous April. So if you intend to move to the UK at some point between now and next 5th of April, your tax residency may have already started, even though you're not there yet. Okay. So for that reason, if it's at all possible, you should try and arrange your finances in the tax year before the one in which you intend to move. So if you're intended to move there before the coming 5th of April, there'll be less financial planning that you can do. If you're able to delay your move until the 6th of April next year onwards, then you're in a very good position, because you've got about 10, 11 months to actually do the necessary financial planning. Okay, so that's UK residence. In the UK, we have another concept called domicile, and this is completely different to residence, although there are some things in common. So residency, as a matter of fact, depends how many days you spend in the UK, and there's no argument about that. And remember, days means midnights. Okay, domicile, or dom, is an entirely different legal concept. Most countries in the world don't have domicile. This goes back to the days when the UK had colonies. It's also different to holding PR. It's different to your passport, your citizenship, your nationality. They're all different legal concepts. And I'll show you an example of how that works in just a second. Now, there's no single legal definition of domicile. But broadly, it's the country you would consider as your permanent home, or the one with which you have the most substantial connections. So if you're a Hong Kong person born and brought up in Hong Kong, you're currently Hong Kong domiciled as far as the UK is concerned. But that can change. If you go to the UK and spend a long time there, your domicile can change. Now, everyone, for the purposes of UK tax, is born with a domicile, their domicile of origin. If your parents were married and your father was alive on the day you were born, you inherit your father's domicile. But if your parents were unmarried, or if your father passed away before you were born, you inherit your mother's domicile. Now, if you've got no connection with the UK and never will have, then it's clearly irrelevant. But if you're watching this webinar, I'm assuming you either do have a connection with the UK or are going to have one at some point. So this is important. So this is a real life example of a friend of mine. So he was born in London. His name's Dimitri. His parents weren't married. They were in a long-term relationship, but they never in fact got married. And his father is Russian and his mother is English. So he grew up in the UK, lived in Hong Kong for 9 years, which is where I met him. We used to work together, and he's currently living in Australia. So he has Russian nationality from his father and a Russian passport, but he has a UK domicile because he gets his mother's domicile, not his father's. If their parents were married, he would have had a Russian domicile, but they're not. So he's got UK domicile. He's got permanent residency in Hong Kong because he did his 7 years and he comes back for the necessary periods. And he's resident in Australia, all at the same time. So this is a real person who has got links for tax purposes to 4 different countries all at the same time. So again, demonstrating your nationality, your domicile, your passport, and your residency are different things in UK law. So for UK purposes, everyone has a domicile. As I said, if you've never had a connection with the UK, it's irrelevant. But if you were born there, if you or one of your parents were born there, if you own property there, it is relevant. you can only have one domicile at a time. There's no such thing. There is such a thing as dual residence. There's no such thing as dual domicile, but it can be changed. So initially, Hong Kong people won't have a UK domicile, but it can change. And if you are UK resident because you're living there, or you've done more than 183 days, but you're still not domiciled, there are some potential tax advantages that we'll cover shortly. So in terms of UK taxes, what we have to pay, well, the first thing to say is that the UK taxes are very different to Hong Kong. The Hong Kong tax code in its entirety is 276 pages. The Australian one, the last time anyone counted, by contrast, is 6,000. For the UK, the last time anyone counted was 7 years ago, and then it was 17,000 pages. Of course, since then, there's been numerous budgets and financial statements, so it's probably over 20,000 pages as we speak today, and had 10 million words. It's about 12 times as long as the Bible, and that's what it looks like. Okay, so different countries have different ways of taxing their residents. So the first one, the countries that you can see in green here, are where there's no income tax on individuals at all. So most commonly Dubai, but there are a couple of other countries that do the same thing. The next is in light blue. It's what we call territorial tax. So that's where the country only taxes income that arises in that country. So in Asia, of course, that's Hong Kong and Singapore and Malaysia. But you'll see that most of the rest of the world is not light blue, it's dark blue. And that's what we call residence-based taxation. And that's where if you're resident in that country, you are taxed on your worldwide income and gains. So if you move to the UK or Australia, then even your Hong Kong income and gains can still be subject to tax, either in the UK or Australia. And then the final one, probably best known, is when, if you're a citizen of the country, it doesn't matter where you live in the world, you'll still have to pay your taxes. And the most common example is the US, of course. Okay, so this is how much tax is raised in various years here. So I'm going to convert all these into the same currency for comparison purposes here, but this is from the IRD website, $609 billion. Australia, a bit higher. This is from their bureau as well. And the UK expenditure there is, well, most recent figures we have of £800 billion sterling. Let's just convert that into all the same currency so you can compare it there. So there's the government expenditure in the local currency. You divide that by the population to see how much they're spending per head of population, because obviously the UK has got a much larger population than Hong Kong. And then you'll see there that the UK spends considerably more per citizen than Hong Kong does, 1.5 times as much, almost there. Because in the UK, we have free schools, free hospitals, we've got armed forces to pay for, government debt, old age pensions, the welfare state, and so on. Expenditure is way higher in the UK. For that reason, taxes have to be higher to pay for that expenditure. So what are UK taxes payable then? So I've divided it into different categories. There's income and capital gains. There's income and gains from UK investment property. So if you've got a buy-to-let apartment, and then inheritance tax. Okay, so if you're non-UK resident and non-UK domicile, so you're Hong Kong and living in Hong Kong, any income that arises in the UK is taxed in the UK because that's where it starts and it will be taxed there. But any non-UK income won't be taxed. So if you're living here, your Hong Kong income won't be taxed in the UK. If you've got UK investment property, the rental income is taxed, the capital gains tax is payable. It never used to be until 2015, and then there was a big change in the law. So now it is payable if you sell the property, and also inheritance tax. And again, if you were a non-domicile, you could get around the inheritance tax by using an offshore investment company. That was changed and stopped in 2017. So now, if you own a property through an offshore structure or any combination of offshore structures, it's still subject to inheritance tax now since 2017. In terms of other assets, so any asset that you own in the UK, so the contents of your house, if you've got a car there, if you've got a plane and you land it there, or a yacht and you dock it in the UK, that makes it a UK asset. If you pass away, that's subject to UK inheritance tax. But your non-UK assets won't be because you're non-domicile. Now, what if you are UK resident but non-domicile, so a Hong Kong person moving to the UK initially? Well, again, any UK income is going to be taxed. But you can protect your non-UK income and capital gains from UK tax by using something called the remittance basis, which I'll cover shortly. UK investment property, always taxed in every situation. Inheritance tax on anything in the UK, yes, but still non-domiciled, so not on your Hong Kong assets or assets anywhere outside the UK. But if you're UK resident, UK domicile, so a British person returning to the UK, a Hong Kong person moving to the UK and staying there a long time, then everything is taxed to them. Okay. Now let's talk about the remittance basis, which I just mentioned. This is a great tax advantage for UK resident non-domiciles. Now this has very recently been in the news because the wife of the Chancellor, a lady called Akshata Murthy, it was, I mean, it's basically her private tax affairs, but they were leaked to the press in the UK. And Ms. Murthy comes originally from India. She was born there. Her parents still live there. Her plan is to return to India in the future to look after her parents. So she's UK resident, but non-domiciled. And she was using the remittance basis. But then there was a big outcry because she was saving, you know, a lot of tax because she's quite wealthy. And she's been basically bullied and forced into not being able to use the remittance basis. I personally think that's terrible. It's a private tax affairs that someone has leaked illegally, and what she was doing nothing wrong. That's entirely within the UK law. Anyway, if you're a UK resident and non-dom, you can choose two different methods of paying tax. The first is called the arising basis, and that's where you pay income tax and capital gains tax on income and gains as they arise. So whenever you get income, it's taxed. So, and that's on your worldwide income and gains. So that's the same way. A UK person living in the UK has to pay tax on the arising basis. Only non-doms have the choice. So the remittance base is where, of course, you pay UK tax on UK income and gains, and any non-UK income and gains that you remit to the UK, and I'll explain a bit more about remittance shortly. So anything, if you've got rental income in Hong Kong and you send the money to a UK bank account, that's entering the UK tax system, that will be taxed. But if you've got rental income in Hong Kong and you leave it in Hong Kong and you don't remit it, that won't be taxed. Okay, so there's potentially a great saving there. And in the case of the Chancellor's wife, she was getting dividends from her father's company based in India, and she was leaving that dividend income in India and not remitting it to the UK, and therefore not paying UK tax on it. But now she's been forced into using the arising basis instead of the remittance basis. Okay, so for each individual tax year, because UK tax years are separate and discrete and they're individual, you can choose which method is best for you for up to 15 years. And then the UK tax year ends on April the 5th. You've got until the 31st of January the following year to decide which is the best basis for you. So you've got plenty of time to do your sums. Now, for the first 7 years, there's no charge to use the remittance basis. So nearly every non-dom in the UK for the first 7 years uses the remittance basis. But from year 8 onwards, or year 8 to 12, if you want to continue using it, you have to pay for it. You pay the remittance basis charge, which is 30,000 sterling a year for those years. So if you don't have a lot of offshore income and gains, at that point, you may well switch to using the arising basis and save yourself £30,000 a year. Years 13 to 15, it goes up to £60,000 a year again. So, you know, fewer non-doms use that later on. And then from the start of year 16 onwards, you will be what's called deemed UK domicile, and you'll no longer be able to use the remittance basis. You'll have to pay tax in the same way as a native-born British person. Okay, so how can your domicile change then from Hong Kong to the UK? So there's 3 different ways. But in doing so, it brings your entire worldwide estate, everything you own everywhere in the world, into the UK tax net for all the UK personal taxes: income tax, capital gains tax, inheritance tax. So the first is very simple. That's simply living in the UK for 15 out of any 20-year period there, or resident there. It used to be 17 out of 20 years, and they reduced it to 15 years. The Labour Party, their shadow chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has announced, because she doesn't like the remittance basis, she's announced that Labour will do away with it and probably bring in a five-year test. So for the first 5 years you're in the UK, you will be able to use something like the remittance basis, but after that you won't. So if Labour can get in at the next election, this could well change. The second one is a bit more complicated, and that's what we call a domicile of choice. Now, there's no single legal definition of it, but it's broadly you have the intention to settle either permanently or indefinitely in the UK. Now, if someone's a wealthy person, HMRC will say to them, oh, you've been staying in the UK a long time. It looks that you've settled here. We think that you've got a domicile of choice in the UK. And if the taxpayer says, no, I haven't, I'm going to leave at some point in the future, if it develops into an argument, which it usually does, this can only be settled by a court. A judge will have to look at all the evidence and come to the decision, and you'll have to abide by it. And the third one is domicile of election, which I'm not going to cover today, but that's broadly where you have a UK dom married to a non-dom. So, and there's some IHT planning angles there, but we won't have time for that today, unfortunately. Okay, so in any event, if one or two is a possibility for you, as long as you plan in advance, you can totally mitigate a lot of the unnecessary tax bills. So let's see what is taxed in the UK on any UK income and any income and gains that are remitted to the UK. So all earnings and pensions are taxed in the UK. So different to Hong Kong, of course. In Hong Kong, pension income generally isn't taxed. Rental income is, obviously, you've got to pay property tax. So, but if you're living in Hong Kong, those are the only taxes you need to be concerned about. If you move to the UK, it's very different. In the UK, savings income is taxed. So bank account interest, for instance, or if you've got any corporate bonds, the coupons are fully taxable as well. Dividends are also taxable, whether it's from a listed company or your own private company, or even from an equity income investment fund. Those are taxed as well at different rates. Insurance policy gains are also taxed. They're not in Hong Kong, but they are in the UK. But there is a very benign regime for this, known as the chargeable event rules, which I'll come to shortly. And then on top of all of that, capital gains are taxed as well. Those aren't income, but the gains or disposals are added to your total income to establish the rate of tax that you have to pay. And I've got some example numbers to show you. So in simple terms, I have simplified this because there are allowances. I'm looking at your UK income and any income from outside the UK that ends up in the UK because you remit it there. So there's the first 50,000 sterling, then between 50 and 100, and anything above 150. So those are the income tax rates that you'll pay. So the lowest rate of income tax in the UK is higher than the highest rate in Hong Kong, and the highest rate is 3 times as high. Capital gains tax on property has got its own particular rates, 18 and 28%. And other assets, so stocks and shares and other assets, they're lower at 10 and 20%. Okay, so this was something that came out a year or so ago now about how the UK is going to pay for the coronavirus. And there's a lot of talk that the Chancellor may well increase both capital gains tax and corporation tax. So he hasn't yet. Time will tell, I guess. We'll see. So those are the rates, but it's probably more helpful to show you the actual numbers that you will pay. So I've got different levels of income. So this is the whole of your UK income plus any income that ends up in the UK. So starting at 50, going up to $1 million. This is the actual tax that you will pay in sterling terms there. So so you've got an effective rate because you'll pay some tax at 20, some at 40, perhaps some at 45 as well. So what you call the effective rate is. So if your total income is £1 million, you won't quite get to 45% because you'll always be paying some at 20, but you'll get close to it. So if your income is 1.5 million Hong Kong a year, your effective rate of tax is 35%. You'll pay over $500,000 Hong Kong dollars in tax. Okay, so remittance then, moving to the UK, it's actually quite complicated and there are a lot of traps that you can fall into, and unfortunately people do on a regular basis. So, and it doesn't just apply to you as the taxpayer, it can apply to people and entities you're connected with, family, and so on. So your bank here in Hong Kong or in Jersey or wherever it happens to be probably won't understand it, and you'll need to give them very clear and specific instructions about how to manage your accounts once you are going to the UK. But there are UK planning solutions, which Anita's going to cover, which will solve all the problems for you. So what is a remittance? Well, firstly, any cash that goes into the UK is obviously a remittance. So that isn't just transferring money from a bank account outside the UK into a bank in the UK. It's also physically taking cash in there with you. So if you go to the UK and you've got cash in your wallet, that's a remittance. That's technically taxable in the UK. Any asset that you buy outside the UK and bring into the UK that's worth more than £1,000 or 10,000 Hong Kong, taking that asset into the UK is a remittance. You're not taking cash in, but it's the equivalent of cash. The fact you happen to have spent cash on a laptop and taken the laptop there means that is taxable. Okay. The biggest trap probably people fall into is using their Hong Kong credit card in the UK and then paying the bill in Hong Kong. That's a remittance because you're buying stuff in the UK and that is taxable in the UK. Any mortgage that you take once you become UK resident to buy property in the UK, that's also a remittance. And if you take a bank loan, once you're UK resident, any security that you put up for that loan is treated as a remittance into the UK and is taxable. Secondly, if you service the loan with your Hong Kong income, that's a second remittance. So that can end up being taxed twice. So be very careful if your bank offer you a loan while you're in the UK, it can end up with a very nasty tax trap. Welcome to the UK. Okay, but there's also indirect remittances as well. So this is when there's services provided in the UK. So no cash, no object has gone into the UK, nothing's been bought there, but it's still taxed as a remittance. So if you have children at school in the UK and it's a fee-paying school, a lot of the schools in the UK have got offshore bank accounts. So they say, well, don't send the money from Hong Kong to our UK bank account. That's a remittance, that'll be taxable. We have a bank account in Hong Kong. Why don't you send the money from your bank account in Hong Kong to our bank account in Hong Kong? Now, unfortunately, that's still a remittance because there's a service being provided in the UK, namely the education of your children. And the banks offer this to their customers without realizing it's still taxable. And it's a very common trap that people fall into. Any flight that you take that either lands in the UK or takes off from the UK to anywhere else in the world. So it isn't just from Hong Kong. You might be in the UK and go on holiday to Spain. If you pay for that flight with your non-UK income, that is a remittance because that plane has been in UK airspace and that's a service provided in the UK. Now, it isn't just for you. It's also a remittance for what we call a relevant person. Again, this is a technical term in green, bold, and underline. So not only is it you, it's your partner and any children under the age of 18, also any grandchildren. Any company that you're connected with, you might have an offshore company, anything that's to do with that, and any offshore trust as well. Any remittances involving any of that is also taxable in the UK. So you can't use an offshore structure to get around the UK tax rules. Okay, so what types of remittance are there? Well, there's three different categories. There's first what we call clean capital. That isn't taxed. Any income that you send to the UK, of course, is taxed because all forms of income are taxed in the UK, and all forms of capital gains are also taxed. Most commonly, though, you have what's called a mixture. And again, this is a technical term. If it's a mixture, it's taxed. So if you've got a Hong Kong bank account and there's what was capital in there, but any income's added to it, so any salary, any rental income, any dividends, if you sell any assets and the money goes into that account, that will turn it into a mixed account. So now, before you become UK tax resident, all of your non-assets are clean capital, okay? But remember, your tax residency can begin before you've even got there, all right? But as soon as you do become UK resident, which might be several months previously, this changes radically. So clean capital from that point onwards can only be cash. It can't be anything other than cash. It also has to be a particular type of cash. Now, I'll explain that in just a second there. All of your other assets then are potentially taxable as soon as your UK tax residency begins. Now, if you've got a bank account that's got a mixture, and income or gains have been added to it after your UK residence begins, this is what we call a mixed fund. Again, this is a technical term, and I'll show you an example. So if you're sending money from your Hong Kong bank account to the UK and there's different types of money in there, there's income, there's rental income, there's capital gains and so on, it won't obviously be clear because it's just one account what the remittance is consists of. So how much of it is capital, how much is income, and so on. So for that purpose, the UK has what are called the ordering rules. This again is another technical term. And that will be applied to the remittance. So these are disadvantageous because all the income that's in that account is treated as going first, because that's taxed at the highest rate. Then that's once the income's all gone, then anything else that goes is capital gains. Once that's all gone, whatever's left is the capital loss, which isn't taxed. And this is a very common trap that people fall into, but it's very, very easy not to fall into the trap if you take good advice. So let's look at this example of a lady. She's got a savings account here in HSBC with 10 million Hong Kong in it. She's non-resident and it's clean capital. So she moves to the UK, becomes tax resident 6th of April 2020. And she, of course, decides to use the remittance basis. So tries not to send too much money from Hong Kong to the UK. So 30th of April, the bank adds her interest to the account, $200,000. So that's what we call tainting it, because now she's in the UK, there's the income has been added to the account in the form of interest. And so even though that account is all cash, some of it is capital, some of it is income, but it's mixed up and you can't unmix it. Okay, so it's all cash, but a clean capital is only a particular type of cash. So it's a mixed fund. So the bank is obviously unaware of what they've done. Why would a Hong Kong bank understand UK tax? Okay, so there's the 10 million that was clean capital. What the bank did was add the interest to that clean capital after she was tax resident, and that makes it a mixed fund. So there's the original 10 million and then the 200,000. So Eleanor then has to send some money from that account to the UK. She wants to send $500,000 Hong Kong dollars. So that goes to the UK. But because that's a mixed fund that it's coming from, the ordering will say that $500,000, all the interest is treated as going first. So the whole 200,000 interest is treated as going to the UK, and then 300,000 of capital. So that 200,000 then is subject to UK tax because it's income. So and Eleanor will pay tax on that completely unnecessarily. What she should have done was told the bank, okay, there's my clean capital account. Don't add anything to that account once I'm UK resident. Get the interest and put that in a separate segregated interest account. And don't use that account when you're in the UK. When you come back to Hong Kong, you can use money from that account, but don't let it taint the original clean capital account. So by doing that, she can remit to the UK any amount up to the whole 10 million and pay no tax. So simply by having a segregated account, she saved paying tax on that $200,000 of interest. Okay. Now, the amount of the remittance as well, this again is a very nasty trap that people fall into. So Eleanor's in the UK, one of her friends back in Hong Kong has a startup company and she decides to invest. So she invests 1 million Hong Kong of her income and gains into the company. No UK tax because the money's still in Hong Kong. Unfortunately, though, her friend's company doesn't do well. So she decides to sell her shareholding, and she only gets $20,000 back because the company's gone right down in value. So she thinks, oh, it's only 20,000 Hong Kong dollars. I'll remit that to the UK because it's not very much money. It'll only be a small tax bill. So she does that. But with a remittance, you have to trace the money back to where it started. So that 20,000 began life as $1 million Hong Kong dollars. The fact that it's gone down still means that the remittance is $1 million Hong Kong dollars. So she actually sends 20,000 Hong Kong dollars, but she's taxed on $1 million. It's a very, very nasty trap, and one that's clearly best avoided. Okay, so some clients will then think, well, how are they going to know? Well, we've had since 2017 something called the Common Reporting Standard, which is where over 150 countries in the world exchange tax information about accounts there. So Hong Kong does, obviously, the UK, pretty much every civilized country. Taiwan has already begun exchanging as well. So any financial institution will report your banks, your investment managers, your ETF providers, your insurance company, any financial asset is going to be reported. And so if you move to the UK and you still have a bank account or an insurance policy in Hong Kong, that will be reported to the UK tax man. So they'll know all about your offshore assets as soon as you get there. So this is just quickly how it works. This is Peggy. She lives in Hong Kong and she has an account in the UK. So that account pays interest, but the bank have to report that to the UK tax authority. That authority then get all that information from Lloyds Bank, so all the details of Peggy's account. They then send that information to the IRD. Now, the IRD probably don't care because the IRD doesn't tax offshore income, so it gets the information. I have no idea what it does with it. But then Peggy decides to move to the UK. So there she is in the UK, but she's still got financial assets with financial institutions in Hong Kong. She's got bank accounts and so on as well. They all report all that detail to the IRD. The IRD then immediately send that information to HMRC in the UK. So even if Peggy doesn't declare all of her Hong Kong assets, HMRC will know about them anyway because of the CRS. Okay, now the UK is very keen on discouraging offshore tax evasion. They have this policy called no safe havens there, and they talk about something called Connect. This is the big IT system, which identifies 500,000 cases of stuff that's going on every year. So basically when someone has got offshore income that they haven't declared. So it's got 22 billion lines of data. That's more information that's held in the British Library. Okay, so it receives information from all the other government departments, so the land registry. It also gets information from all the estate agents, so it knows how much rental income is payable. They scan all the social media and pay sites as well. They know what car you're driving. They know what any companies that you have as well. They get all the information for the airlines. They can see what flights you're taking, what class you're flying, where you're flying to and from, and so on. They scrape all the social media websites as well to see what people are spending their money on. You know, you buy a new watch, take a photo, post it on TikTok or whatever. They scrape all of that. And they also get data on credit card expenditure as well. So it's a huge amount of information going in there. Now, in the old days, they'd have to have a human being to trawl through that info. These days, of course, they don't need it. They've got artificial intelligence with these algorithms and machine learning, and it just flags up when someone's lifestyle is not in line with their declared income. Okay, they also now get information if you let out using Airbnb as well. Now, there is a double tax treatment, thankfully, between the UK and Hong Kong. So you won't have to pay tax twice on the same income and gains. So for Hong Kong, those are the taxes, and for the UK as well, all the personal tax. So in general terms, if Hong Kong tax has been paid on Hong Kong income, it won't also be taxed in the UK. But remember that Hong Kong taxes are lower. So if you pay, for instance, 15% property tax in Hong Kong and you remit it to the UK and you're a 40% taxpayer in the UK, you've got to pay another 25% tax on top. And clearly there's no capital gains tax here. So any capital gains that go to the UK are going to be taxed. Okay, right. I'm now going to hand over to Anita, who's got the good news.
Well, thank you, Jason. Thank you very much. Wow. Are we still moving to the UK? Well, I can understand why Jason, my colleagues, and my husband decided to come to Hong Kong like 20, 30 years ago and spend time here. But anyhow, if just like myself, you and I still decided moving to UK is the right thing to do, and I'm going to share some ideas with you. Well, the key really is to do financial planning before you go to UK, and ideally before the tax year, which is the 6th of April 2023. You could do split tax year. You can apply for split tax year, which means, you know, they cut it right through in the middle, but we don't know when it's going to be successful. There's no guarantee. And if it doesn't succeed, potentially you have to pay tax all the way back to the 6th of April 2022. So even before you go to UK. Quite alarming, actually. Being Hong Kong Chinese, we don't understand this, do we? But anyhow, financial planning. The most important thing really today is to understand and distinguish between clean capital, income, and gain. And clean capital really is just cash. And a lot of times, what we don't understand is if we do not set up segregated accounts in Hong Kong, as Jason put it, you can potentially mix it with income and it becomes a mixed capital. And if that happens, then you will have to pay potentially up to 45% of tax to the money that we remit to the UK, which you thought is clean capital. The problem is if you mix it in your assets while in the UK, you can't unmix it. And I heard HSBC doesn't like the idea of helping their clients to segregate accounts and transfer the interest into, you know, the accounts for you guys. So once it's mixed, you can't unmix it. I think it's become a problem. However, we still highly recommend you to speak to your banker, help you to do that, and hopefully it doesn't cause a problem. So anyhow, you can see that I'm getting really nervous because, you know, become mixed asset is, you know, quite nightmare. So I will highly encourage you guys to look at different angles, different ideas. Right, pre-immigration financial planning. Really, the big question is, do you have enough clean capital for the period of time you're in the UK? Or in my, you know, layman term is, do you have enough money to support your lifestyle while in the UK? If you do that, that really is not a problem. There's not much you need to worry about. But if you do that, all you can do is to keep everything in cash. And if you keep everything in cash, you lost opportunity cost. Or in other words, inflation will erode your money eventually. I know we talk about the US, raising interest rate this year because inflation is really high. So really, do you really want to keep everything, in cash? And that's why a lot of people usually will invest some of the money, or at least try to, beat inflation. And that's what we're going to do. But if you invest your money, that money is no longer in capital. And that's why before you move into the UK, you really have to, consider different ways moving forward, and proper financial planning will help you. Right, capital gain tax. So let's look at an example. That's my favorite part, actually. All right, two sisters, Anne and Charlotte Lau, both from Hong Kong. And like many of us, we love stock and shares. So they invested into Tencent shares back in 2016 with $500,000. And wow, stocks and shares always surprise us, don't we? So in 4 years' time, the Tencent shares grow from 500,000 Hong Kong dollars to $1.67 million. Really, really amazing investment profits. Right, however, they really love the UK, so they moved to UK, and after 2 years in the UK, they decided it's time to buy a property. And right now, they don't really have any clean capital they can use, so they have to follow about, where to, get the funds from. And at that time, well, thank you very much. The Tencent shares has gone down a little bit to 1.6 million, so they decided to sell the shares and bring it to the UK to buy the property. So let's look at the two sisters and what they do. And very straightforward. She kept the shares, so she sold it at 1.6 million. If you remember the numbers from the previous slide, that 1.6 million minus the money that she put into, she actually made a gain of £110,000, or in other terms, 1.1 million Hong Kong dollars. On that gain, she's subject to UK tax because UK tax resident now. So she has to pay £22,000, which is $226,000. Quite nice, buy a few handbags. But anyway, Charlotte, which is a smart girl. So what she did before she moved to the UK, she took some financial advice, hopefully from me. And what she did right before she moved to the UK, she sold her Tencent shares at $1.6 million and buy them back on the following day. And as at the time, she was in the UK, in Hong Kong. So in Hong Kong, it's great. There's no capital gain tax. But there's no free lunch. She still need to pay a little bit. So she had to pay just over $3,000 stamp duty. Oh, that is the beauty now. Remember, the shares has gone down, didn't you? So she bought it back at 1.6 million, 1.67 million. And then Tencent shares at the time when she sold is 1.6 million. She actually made a loss. So for Charlotte, smart girl, a bit of financial planning advice, she actually paid no capital gain tax. Well done, Charlotte. Right. Well, however, I'm a financial advisor. I like to keep everything simple. So we tend to look at different ways for financial planning. So one thing we would really like to share with you is to structure something which is long-term and robust and simple and straightforward, which is insurance. Well, let me tell you a little bit about it. Why do we want to consider insurance? Well, first of all, if you remember what Jason just said, the first 20 minutes, half an hour, everything you hold under your personal name are subject to UK taxes. I'm talking about bank accounts, investment portfolio, properties, so on and so on. And when we talk about tax, unlike Hong Kong, we got, they tax us on dividends, interest, and rent, and even capital gain tax as well. Some people don't realize if you have an investment portfolio with a bank or online platform, if you switch to funds, you buy and sell the investments, you are subject to capital gain tax. It's quite complicated, isn't it? So anyhow, so what we could do, we could transfer the ownership of these assets or your investment into a wrapper or so-called envelope. Into insurance policy, trust, corporate structure, so on and so on. But anyway, the professional term is PPLI at a private bank, which is called private placement life insurance. But the actual name really, from two English word, portfolio bond. And there are lots of UK tax advantages. Right, let me take you to the UK government website. And this is a link Well, don't worry if you don't know where to look for it. We'll send you the presentation later on. So if you look at that, insurance policy, policyholder taxation menu, and here you go, personal portfolio bonds introduction. Let's highlight it for you. Right, I'm not going to read it to you. It's not English lesson today, but if you're interested, you can read it through. So basically what it says here, because the investment or the properties is held in an envelope, is enveloped into insurance policy, the policy owner, which is the client or myself, we don't have to pay any taxes for anything that happens inside the bond until the bond comes to an end. So what it means by coming to an end, that's when the policy, that's when the insured, the last insured person passes away, or you decided to surrender policy fully. Right, but this is differences. If you hold on, the investment under your personal name, any interest, including savings, you have to pay taxes. Well, potentially 45%. And if you switch the funds, sell any investment within the portfolio, you have to pay capital gain tax. But however, in the insurance policy, none of this happens until the policy comes to an end. So the benefit, the lack of taxes, well, in a professional term, is gross roll-up. Right, now you probably wonder what you can put under the policy, isn't it? Well, that's a long story. I can't tell everything right today, not enough time. But in a nutshell, just to answer some of your questions, the reason that it works is because taxes goes up to the policy owner. But in this case, the policy owner is the insurance company, and the insurance company is based in Isle of Man. And this place is exactly like Hong Kong. There's no capital gain tax, no income tax. So everything that happens is actually legal and very normal. Right, existing policy. What happens if you already got existing investment with private bank or online platform? Well, very straightforward. Well, I can explain to you how it works when we have a chance. You can have it. You can have your investment bank, private bank portfolio or online platform portfolio under insurance policy. So that you enjoy the best of both worlds. You can still manage your portfolio the way that you wish with the bank, but you get all the tax benefits from the insurance policies. Quite a nice idea, isn't it? Right, then some of you might start wondering, well, okay, it sounds great, but what do I do if I want to withdraw the money? Well, here you go. Again, let's refer back to the UK government website about insurance. You can withdraw 5% of the premium that you pay into the policy each year without a gain, and 5% of money that you invest basically. And if you don't take it in the first year, that will be carried forward in the next year. So you can take 10%, so on and so on. Well, I love numbers, so let's look through that. Here you go. So what it means to you is if you need 5%, if you'd like to withdraw 5% from the bond, that will last 20 years without paying taxes. And if you only need 4% for your lifestyle, that's 25 years. And if you only need 3% for your lifestyle, that's 33 years. Well, that's quite nice, isn't it? However, you have to remember that would only work if you prepare all that as clean capital before you move to the UK. Right, but obviously your second question is what happens if I withdraw more than 5%, isn't it? And it's likely happen, and don't worry about that. With this feature, with the unique feature of sub policies and mini policies, if you do proper financial planning ahead for the next 10, 20, 30 years, we can help you plan ahead, and there are a lot more tax efficient benefits from that. Right, anyway, let's go for some examples again. Now, another two girls, Bella and Claire, always Chinese girls. I'm not sure why about this presentation, all from Hong Kong. Two very successful women like myself. So each of them got 50 million Hong Kong dollars in investment portfolios of some sort. And let's assume the growth rate is 5% per year from a combination of income and capital growth. Both of them decided that they would like to stay in the UK for 5 years only. And well, they have quite expensive lifestyle, by the way. So every year they need 1.2 million Hong Kong dollars. So that is 120,000 pounds to live on. Well, should we look at the two girls and how they plan ahead? So let's look at Bella. Bella kept it very simple. She loved the idea of clean capital. So what she did, 5-year expenses, 600,000 pounds in cash in clean capital. So make sure that the interest is paid into a segregated account. Well, again, 2% is quite unrealistic, but well, here we go. The remaining 4.4 million pounds, obviously she's a smart girl, keep it invested. So every year she use the remittance basis and remit 120,000 pounds to the UK for a lifestyle without triggering any taxes. But after 5 years, her portfolio value is now 5.6 million. And let's look at her sister. Oh, by the way, 36,000 interest. Claire have spoken to me. So she transferred her 5 million pounds portfolio into a portfolio bond insurance policy, and it's fully invested from day one. And every year she withdraw 120,000 pounds to support her lifestyle. And again, she can liquidate the assets only when she needs to, as is within the 5% per year. There's no taxes to pay. And after 5 years, her portfolio is now 5.7 million. Even just a simple example, you can see Claire's sister is 100,000 pounds better off than Bella. Right, second scenario. By the way, just if you wonder, I have 7 samples to share with you, so please stay here. So second scenario number 2. So like many of us, again, we love properties, don't we? So after 3 years, Bella and Claire, they seem to like the UK and they want to buy a property in London, and they each need 500,000 pounds. So now, how do they do that? If you remember Bella, straightforward, clean capital. So after 3 years, she still has 240,000 pounds in her clean capital, which is great, simple, straightforward. But however, once you use that, you got no money in clean capital for a lifestyle, just to remind you that. And she still need another 260,000 pounds anyway for the UK property, for the London property. So she decided that, you know, keep it simple, might as well remit the whole 500,000 pounds, you know, from her investment portfolio to the UK to make this happen. Wow, that's not clean capital, that's mixed fund, as Jason put it, and all the rules apply. And there's, thank you very much, 45% of tax. So she has to remit 881,000 pounds to get 500,000 pounds net. So she pay, well, in Hong Kong, in Cantonese, say back man gone, sorry, nearly $4 million of cash. I know $4 million doesn't buy us a property in Hong Kong, but you can buy a nice one in UK, might even be able to buy 2. So let's look at Claire. Well, Claire, if you remember her portfolio bond, her 5% allowance is 250,000 pounds, but she only needs 120 per year for her lifestyle. So the remaining money accumulated after all these years, she still got 520,000 pounds, you know, within the allowance, tax-free. So Claire can buy 2 properties effectively. Oh, again, I haven't really had the experience. She doesn't have to complete UK tax return apparently. That is quite a heavy duty job. One day I have to face that, by the way. Right, let's look at number 3 scenario. After 5 years, they love the UK, so they decided to stay there for longer. I believe they love the weather there, don't they? So, wow. So Bella, obviously, you know, she only prepared for 5 years of clean capital for a lifestyle, and now she has to remit further income from her mixed assets to the UK. Well, in simple terms, if you like to, you can screenshot. She has to remit 190,000 pounds per year to get 120,000 pounds per house. So every year, well, simple terms, you pay 70,000 pounds taxes. And Claire, very happy girl, 120,000 pounds within the 5%. She basically can do that for 32 years without any worries and no taxes. Well done, Claire. Oh, 2057 before UK taxable event. I don't know how old she will be, but this is pretty good. Right, scenario number 4. What if they stay more than 7 years? Now the numbers are getting more interesting. So Bella, again, thank you to Jason. Remittance space is great, but she has to pay £30,000 fees per year to make this happen. And now her portfolio is 4.8 million. And just look at the red numbers, good enough to show you she paid £500,000 in taxes to UK government. I can understand why the UK government welcome us there, don't they? Right, anyway, this is Claire. No change, no taxes. You can see which girl is smarter. And now her portfolio is worth 5.4 million. So look at that, she's £600,000, better off than her sister. I don't know why Claire didn't speak to Bella before they went. So 0 taxes, no fees. Now, they really do like the UK, and they tend to stay more than 12 years. So after 12 years, the remittance basis charges go up to £60,000. And now dear Bella has so far paid £1 million to the UK government. Thank you very much. And Claire, again, no change. And she's £1.3 million better off than Bella. Well, maybe I should encourage to donate that money to the charity. Anyway, after 15 years, now it gets interesting. Both of them become deemed domicile. So they're both UK domicile. So now Bella hasn't got a choice. She can only go for a rising basis for all her income worldwide, in the UK, in Hong Kong, and potentially in Spain. And her portfolio now, the value is £5 million. And all the income and gains in the portfolio will now be taxed. 1.4 million in income tax alone. And then Claire, she's also UK domicile, UK deemed domiciled. And as her portfolio is inside a portfolio bond insurance policy, there's no tax on income and gains. And now her portfolio is 6.9, what big is £7 million. She's £2 million. Well, I have to speak in Cantonese. 我都唔知道200萬港紙係啲咩，係咪2000萬港紙啊？ Wow, well done, girl. Right, now, an alternative scenario, I don't understand why they do that, but anyway, they met Mr. Right in the UK. They found a nice boyfriend, they love this British guy, and they're getting married after 6 years. And in fact, after 6 years, if you're BNO holders, you become UK citizen. Congratulations. So now they're going to get married to a British guy, and let's see what happens. So HMRC regard them as a domicile choice in the UK. So that now both girls are UK domicile. And look at Bella. She can't use remittance basis. So from the 6th year onwards, she will be taxed on a rising basis on her worldwide income and gain. So, well, I'm not going to repeat that now, £7,000 per year for tax. And look at Claire. No difference. So everything is in the bond. So she's good until 2057. Well, so it's quite expensive marriage, isn't it? Well, if I were Bella, I would tell my husband, you pay that tax or you look after me either way. Anyhow, back to the presentation. To summarize, UK tax is complicated, it's very, very high. And remittance basis has lots of advantages, but it can get complicated. And there's a lot of potential traps. If you remember these two ladies, I will have to rethink my strategies. And you have to do an annual tax calculation every year. You might need to hire a tax accountant to help you, and that's cost. So planning using insurance is a simple and highly tax efficient way to avoid any accidents and oversights. Straightforward. And a lot of clients actually, a lot of us actually choose to using both insurance and remittance basis. But the most important thing today is proper financial planning well before you move to the UK. So anyway, that's end my presentation, but it's not the end of the presentation. If you've got any questions right now, please feel free to ask. And you can type your question on the chat group. We're going to stay for another few minutes. 有冇人有問題想發問啊？可以隨便用中文或者英文打去個 chat box，我哋可以 answer 你哋嘅問題。OK， 有個 Q&A。Jason, there's a question here. Can I check insurance payout for claims under critical illness or medical insurance will be taxed?
Good question. It depends on whether or not the policy is what we call in the UK a qualifying policy. Again, that's a technical term. So it may be qualifying, in which case the payout won't be taxed. But if it's not a qualifying policy, the payout will be taxed. Probably no good asking your Hong Kong insurer, they won't have a clue. If you've got the policy documents and details and you can need to have sight of them, I should be able to let you know whether it's a qualifying policy or not.
Thank you, Jason. 請問大家仲有冇其他問題想發問啊？我哋可以留多大概1分鐘左右，就去到1點半啦。Right, so well, thank you very much for staying for this hour for a presentation between myself and Jason. If you have any more questions, feel free to send us an email or give us a call. And the presentation today will send you a copy through your personal email. So thank you very much. 咁期待收到你哋嘅問題或者你哋嘅電郵。Thank you. Bye bye.